All right. So the first thing I want to discuss, probably not too in depth, but I have an example for you, and we obviously have the assignment built in, is the annotated bibliography assignment, which is next. The next assignment, major assignment we're doing. We've discussed it mildly. I think we've touched upon it. The relevance to the annotated bib and the scaffolding of the other assignments is that the annotated bibliography will allow you to sort of pre-build what you will put in your lit review. So when you start to think about summarization for your literature review, the annotated bib is the tool you want to use to sort of pre-examine those sources that you're going to discuss in your literature review. With that said, I'm going to click over to the assignment. I can't see your faces or the text right now because I'm actually in the classroom. So let me just look at the assignment. Have you all had a chance to look at the annotated bibliography assignment?
Yes.
I'm not seeing a whole lot of other than one confirmation. Kaya's looking around at children running by. Okay, I'm getting some up. Courtney, have you read it? Stephanie's read it. Aubrey, have you read it? No. All right, so this is the part of the virtual class and any class I hate, is where I have to read something I've produced in writing and made available, but we're going to do it. So continuing the process of composition via scaffolding prior assignments in this course, you will need to now perform research specific to your topic. One of the most useful tools in conducting research is the annotated bibliography. An annotated bibliography combines the citations found in the reference list at the end of documents in an APA format with annotations about each of the sources. For this assignment, you will construct an annotated bibliography based upon the topic you've selected to focus on for this course, i.e., your topic selection assignment. Its purpose is an organizing tool that is helpful when working on research projects, especially in the academy. An effective annotated bibliography is used to compile research sources in one location and provide the researcher, i.e. you, the writer, with a quick access to the information contained in each source. The audience should be directed to scholarly peers, and you may assume that they have only a casual familiarity with your topic or issue. The content subject of your annotated bibliography will consist of the sources that you deemed relevant to your topic and or questions of inquiry. While you may encounter sources that are not relevant or do not fit the scope of your project while researching, for the purposes of this assignment, you will only include ones that you find useful and relevant. You will cite the source in proper APA 7th edition format. The citation should be organized in alphabetical order by author, just as in any APA references page. Follow with a brief annotation that summarizes the source, typically 3 to 5 sentences. You may quote from the source. I would highly recommend that you do quote from the source, but do not copy and paste the abstract from their source, right? Ideally, all the annotation should be in your own words. So what that means is you should paraphrase what you're quoting and use a portion of whatever you're going to quote, which would be the typical scholarly writing you should be doing anyway. You will, in 1 or 2 sentences, explain the source's relevance and importance to your issue, topic, research question. That is strictly for you. That, if you're thinking about how you're going to write that 1 or 2 sentences, that means you're going to say, if I'm thinking about, let's say, traumatic brain injuries, if I'm thinking about a topic related to traumatic brain injuries, I might want to think, okay, I've looked up a primary source. This seems to be the military's direct site for the Veterans Affairs. So I would write something like that. Like, this is my primary source for this topic because it's relevant to the conversation in whatever way, right? Now, the constraints for the annotated bibliography is that it's a fairly rigid genre. Your citation must adhere to the APA format, which we will discuss later in this meeting. This will be one of the central components of the grade for this assignment. Failure to follow APA format exactly will harm your grade because I'm not questioning your content or the value of the sources. Instead, I can only look at the rigid formula of the format for this particular assignment. So the annotation for each source should follow an academic style. In other words, it should follow academic English. I know that we like to use our voice, and translanguaging is an important value in writing. But specifically for this assignment, I would try to stick to the academic language. This means that you must construct with elevated and sophisticated language correct grammatical sentences that effectively summarize what each source has to say. Additionally, you should explain how each source is relevant to the issue you have selected and what it adds to your knowledge about your issue. It does have specific guidelines. 5 to 7 sources of various types, which includes books, articles, websites, etc. Sources focused around a narrowed issue or question of inquiry. Adherence to the APA format, which we've talked about for all citations. Sources should be in alphabetical order according to the author. If you have the same author for multiple different things, the first one name, the second one should get ... where the name would be, so that I know it's the same author. That's the APA format. We'll talk more about that in a minute. Thoughtful and complete annotations of between 100 and 150 words with correct grammar, punctuation, and spelling. I feel like I just read my entire thing that's already existed for everybody to read, but does everyone feel good about that? Do we understand? Do we have questions at this point?
Good.
I do have, Courtney, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say I'm good with everything.
Okay, perfect. As we progress, I do have a rubric that I can provide you. I can actually put it in after the class. It won't be one that I would use to grade, but it would show you the type of things that might be relevant to how you produce it, right? So how you outline your thing. I did not provide it because I don't want to oversaturate you guys with information right away, right? I want to make sure that you get the point of the annotated bib, and then when we start working on it, we can start to look at the outlining and scaffolding of the actual document. Now I'm going to share my screen because what I have is my wife isn't here to give me the side eyes when I mention it. So a couple of years back, she worked on an annotated bib for a graduate program, and I kept that around because I helped her do some revision work on it, and I always thought it's a good example of a top tier, sort of higher sophisticated language annotated bibliography. So we're going to look at it because it's been modified to APA 7th edition for you guys. But I don't want you to worry so much about the languages. I want you to look at how it's the formula of the format. So let me go ahead and do that. And I will share this document. And so now we're looking at, can everybody see the document I'm sharing? Has it populated for you?
Not yet.
Should be a Word document.
It has for me.
Yep. Yep.
Yes.
Okay, so as popular, I'm gonna. Alix is already following APA 7th edition standard, so he's not going to miss anything. It's still working for him. One of the first things you'll note is that before I even get into APA, there's certain things on this document that are specific to the new standard of APA. One is that there is no longer a running head on student papers for APA. Now, in 6th edition, there was. 7th edition, there is not. The easiest way, I would say, and this document is actually in files for you guys, so you can pull it up. You can download it. Here's what I would do. I would download this document. I would open it. I would rename it, whatever you want to name your annotated bib. I've left student name, instructor information. I would put your stuff in there. It has a title for the one you guys have. The one I have for you guys for the sample, I changed it to just say title to your title, meaning I would change it. There's a space after that, and then the first annotated bibliography is right away. There is no introductory sentence. There is nothing that transitions a reader to understanding why you're talking about the topic. So the title should effectively say exactly what your topic is going to be. For example, Alexis could just simply say personality tests as it correlates to X. That's it. Into file. Like, it doesn't need anything more or less than that. It doesn't need to be fancy. If you notice, the citation style has a hanging indent. Does everyone know how to do a hanging indent for an annotated bib? Not really a trick question. I'm moving this around a lot on you guys. Sorry. Let me stop sharing for half a second while I talk to you guys and see what the feedback is. Please use the public chat so that those people who are not visibly looking at me, bored like Courtney, can give me their input. Do you know how to do a hanging indent for an annotated bibliography reference?
No.
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 I think I do, but I'm not sure.
Well, it's a tricky one. I'll tell you that I think it was my first year as a graduate student in an English program that somebody said, you know, you're doing this wrong. And I was like, I never knew how to do it, so I just faked it. I used a combination of shift return and spaces to make it look right. And it would break horribly. And then somebody goes, man, you're an idiot. You work that hard when all you got to do is this. And I'm going to show you right now. And I minimize. Okay, so let me make sure I'm sharing the right document. There it is. So I've got it open. If you look, I'm going to blow this up so we can see. See this? Can you all see where my cursor is?
Yes.
I'm highlighting the word paragraph. That little tab at the very end that says paragraph settings. If you click that, it literally opens up a dialog box. The second dialog is indentation under special. When you open this, it should say none. If you change it to hanging and hit OK, it will do what this is, like this. That's all you got to do. Really stupid when you think about that I was going through hitting shift return and space, and visually trying to make sure it looked okay. And I got away with it, clearly, because I was able to do it my entire undergrad with that. But it wasn't a very effective way to do it. So I just told you the way to do it. Very specific because it will save you hours of work later. You will do each one of your annotated bibliography references, the actual bibliography portion, as it would go into your reference page. It's a kind of a trick question, but why do you think I would want you to do that? Mariel, I will have to look at how to do it in Google Docs. I'll be real frank with you. Historically, when I've done documents in Google Docs and I'm trying to find stuff, not every feature that's in Microsoft is available in Google Docs, and that was one of the ones I could not find. But I haven't looked at Google Docs in about a year and a half or two because I've had access to Microsoft Word enough that I've never really had to go back and rely on it. And when I do work in Google Docs, I download it and then use Microsoft Word. I can get, if you send me an email, Mariel, am I saying your name right, Mariel? Okay. Send me an email, Mariel, and we will look at that offline together. I will go find it, and then I'll walk you through how to do it once I look for it. But I don't want to get sidetracked on that totally, so we won't do that right now. Okay, so you understand my question, right, that I asked you guys a minute ago? Why would I want you to format this explicitly as it goes into the reference?
So you can see the names are the most important that pop out.
Yeah, that's definitely one valid point. I also want you to be able to just copy and paste this into a reference page. I don't want you to have to go back. Again, I'm part of what I'm helping you with is some of the nonsensical stuff I did when I was a student, especially as an undergrad and even in my first year of my master's program, where I would build an entire paper. I wouldn't do the references page to the very end. And then I would literally go back sometimes and go, where did I get this? What is this article? Why do I have this? And I couldn't find it. And it would take an extra, man, in some cases, it can take 3 or 4 extra hours to track down something. If you found something really cool that was really obscure, but you don't remember how you found it, by doing an annotated bib like you're doing and doing it correctly the first time, doing this part correctly, you save yourself hours of headaches later is the catch to it, okay? So, I don't know. I'm kind of I'm tracking what's going on in public chat too. Mariel, we can look and see. I'm not sure. I swore, and maybe someone else can correct me here, but GBC, I think you get access to Microsoft Word through your tuition. I think. I may be wrong. but we can look into it.
Yeah, I want to know how that works too, because me being in the program that I am, I don't know if I have access to it.
Yeah, let me look, because I know that when I was a student, and even with my doctoral work, at the university I was at, they provided access to Word. You just had to download it through the university's website. But I will look into it. Mariel might also be talking about the fact that since she's a high school student and they give them Google Chromebooks. Yeah, exactly. It's a
Yeah,
nightmare.
no.
Download
On Chrome,
anything.
it's hard.
It's what they have available. So I got you, Mariel. We'll take care of it. Courtney has some good questions though, because yeah, Microsoft or Macintosh only has Pages, which is a nightmare in and of itself. So going back to the
No, you can download Word on it. That's what I learned.
well, no, I know you can, but when you buy a Mac, it comes with Pages only.
Oh,
And I've had a lot of students only try to submit stuff in Page format, and it's horrible because Microsoft doesn't have any way of opening that software. Okay, so if you look, the first thing the most important thing on this is that these are kind of longer. They're about a page long for this particular annotated bibliography. I would not go over a page per entry. That's the easiest way to tell whether you're getting a little too in depth and you're breaking away from the annotation and getting into the lit review. So each one of these should be about a page in length. I would shoot for a page for a second reason. When you do your lit review, a lot of the stuff is just plug and play into the lit review. By thinking about it in that way now, you kind of stop yourself from having to write twice for every single one of the entries, right? You'll note that the names are like this. Now, this is important. I have a second document, and I don't know if I have you guys. Can you see the other document I opened that just has the reference?
No.
Okay, let me stop sharing it that way and share my entire screen. Maybe that will help. There, now everyone can see everything, right? You can see all yourselves back on my screen and duplicate. Probably is kind of weird, surreal. Okay, so I'm holding up the second document. You see this one?
Yes.
I'm going to use this to do something because I don't want to mess with our copy. So we're going to copy and paste this first document to this one. By the way, for a cheating side note, what just happened when I imported these? How it gave it a hanging indent, even though it's a regular paragraph. You all saw that happen?
Yes. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
This is why when you do your annotated bibs, I would not do the hanging indent until you're done. Because everything you type after this line will end up getting a hanging indent too. And it's easy to fix. You literally just go take it off. And it's fixed, right? And now I can tab this and it's totally fine. But in annotated bibliography, you do not tab paragraphs unless you have the tab set correctly. You do tab them. See how I can mess with it? You do tab them, but make sure your tabs are set correctly. I've seen some papers that have come in. The other option is to paste it like this, and it creates a font. Anyhow, I've seen some papers come in that have a strange tab in it. That tab should only look like this. That's all I'm going to say about that. I'm kind of covering the APA stuff at the same time as annotated bib, so we may not have to go over a lot of this stuff, but you'll note that the first names are Abbas and Solman, period. Not, and this is why I did it in another form. Right? So we can all see this. So some people are submitting stuff to me with the doctor and the full names and all this other stuff. For APA style, it is strictly last name. Assume that if you're citing them, they have the credentials to be cited. So their status as a doctor or an RN or an LPN or a medic or an EMT or any of the different abbreviations that are in the universe of abbreviations after and before names do not need to apply. You will see that in APA style, if it's written in the text itself, so a Boston Solomon study gets an and like this, but I'm going to do it at the back of this. If I were citing it like this, it would get the ampersand. One day, you follow what I'm saying there? So if it's in line with the text, it gets and for APA style. But if it's inside a citation tag like this, it always gets the ampersand. It gets a little confusing, and I'm not gonna. That's not the stuff that I'm gonna worry about when I grade you on APA. That's the stuff I'll point out to you, obviously, because you need to do it correctly. Because there are professors that will expect it to be perfect, and so we will get you there. You will note that as we look through this, there is no opinions at all. That's where I want you to understand the language when I say academic language for the annotated bibliography. It does not matter how you feel about, in this case, this person, Abbas and Solomon may have said something contentious about how families recover after this sort of a crisis that we may not agree with. But nobody cares about in an annotated bibliography about what you agree or disagree with. It is this is where you get to be unbiased. You're strictly saying these two authors studied this, they wrote about this, and this is what this is, period. That's why you don't need to worry about it getting too long. You'll note that where there is a page, and correct me if I'm wrong because it's been a hot minute since I've done MLA, but MLA just gets the page number. APA, you will put a P period and then the page number. So if you're trying to figure out how to transition from MLA still to APA, that's one of the big ones. If you have 2 pages, looking at what I've got here, it's PP period. And then you would have whatever that is, right? Like 127, 128. So if it's multiple pages, it's PP period, and then the page number hyphen page number. Now, Alix, ask me the trick question. Why is it PP?
Why is it PP?
Because much like I told you in another conversation, it's an antiquated holdover from back in the day that we don't even know anymore why we do it. It's an acronym for something, but I don't know. There, now I told you something. I don't know everything because nobody can know everything. So, moving forward. You'll see that now here's a trick, and this is an academic language trick for everybody. Courtney, you're gonna love this one.
No.
To avoid driving people nuts, do not say Straight Springer said, 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 Straight Springer said. Because you see how that starts to become annoying? You're going to annoy and kill your reader too. As long as you're doing an annotated bibliography and this is 1 page, you should switch back and forth between the pronouns that are appropriate. If it's a collective pronoun, they, them, you can use that. I would interchange between that. You could say Abbas and Solomon used, and then literally say they noted, like it shows here in the example I have for you. Hi, Stephanie's child. Another option is to say the authors, right, or the scholars. If you mix it up, your reader, i.e., you, will not get bored and complacent and mess up. That works in the annotated bibliography, and it lets you sit in 1 page and realize that you're only talking about 1 article. It helps because if you bring in another voice to that article, you're doing something wrong. Y'all dig what I'm saying? Like, it's 1 article per annotation, period. Don't try to talk about how it compares against something. It's not a comparison contrast. It's explicitly instructive about that article only. And that's it. That's the simplicity of the annotated bibliography. I would definitely get accustomed to writing in a way that lets you use quotes. But as you see here, I'm going to highlight this one because this particular student, i.e. my wife, was famous for dropping quotes into what she wrote. She would just pick up a quote and drop it right into there. And one of the hardest things I had to help her with, and I helped everybody with, obviously, over the years, is figuring out how to paraphrase a quote and make it not only maintain the important part if you must continue the quote, but also make it your own words. So they found that the child survivors responded well to non-deliberative social group work. That's what they said, but she's paraphrased it. And if you look at the very back of this sentence that I'm highlighting, she left in a part of the quote, which is games, crafts, and music combine verbal and nonverbal components of problem solving, and a page number. So even though this whole thing is a reiteration of what was on that page, she's only using a portion of the quote so as to avoid simply copy pasting the quote in. So when I tell you guys don't copy paste from the abstracts or don't copy paste from the quote, that's what I'm talking about. It's a dangerous game. In particular, if you're doing it, and people will do it, they will research something, they will see that there's a nice, robust 250-word abstract. They will highlight, copy, highlight, Control A, Control C, open the word document, Control V, and Dean's not going to go check out that article, but I might, because it might be interesting to me. So,
I got a question.
Absolutely.
So the first sentence of the item you just highlighted, there's no citation at the end. I thought every sentence that was taken from an article needed a citation at the end of the sentence.
This one right here?
Mhm.
The one I'm highlighting?
My screen just froze. I will.
That's all right. Let me know when it gets there.
It's the sentence is started with they.
They noted.
Yeah, that sounds like it.
They noted the children experienced multiple levels of trauma.
Yep.
It's
yep.
because here's why. The sentence before it has a citation, and the sentence after it has a citation. So it's sort of an implied citation. If that makes sense. You actually have a little bit of leeway to get away with that. If you have
Okay.
8, and it's really at the discretion of the professor. I personally would not put one in every single sentence in an annotated bibliography. Every other one, if you're still dealing with the same page, for example, is going to work because you're not putting your input in at all. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like there should not be anything related to what you think. It's strictly how you summarize what they did. So in this case, she's just continuing the conversation, right? They noted and then they found it's the same exact conversation. I say that because if you were to put one after every single sentence in an annotated bib, you're going to have a whole lot of citations. And we're going to get into why that's problematic in a minute. So does anyone have any questions about the annotated bib, or does this kind of make sense enough for you to look at it and build it? It doesn't need the density of language that this has, but it does need the structure. So I would use this Word document, rename it for yourself, change the information for yourself, and then just use it as the format. That also means deleting all the work that's on it, though, as you go along, right?
Yes.
Aubrey, nod your head yes. Thank you. All right, so I'm going to close and we're going to look at and transition over to the second important conversation we're going to have today, which is the APA 7th edition format. And we're going to talk in depth about what Alix pointed out, which is my favorite demon in academia, the parentheses, or as I like to call it, the most abused tool in the game right now. So everyone can see my screen. I have a Microsoft Word document open for the Forte study as sample paper. It's actually inside your folder for you if you're looking for it. It has some weird number and then it says stewed paper at the end of it. I think it's at the top of the list. So I'm just going to move forward. But before I do, let me switch back over to Baby one more time and say, does anyone have a question about the annotated bib?
No.
A lot of dead space. A lot of
Not
dead
yet.
space. Face says no. Okay. Well, I'm going to point out that while we're recording, this particular meeting and all subsequent meetings are being transcribed by a third party. Somebody has requested they be transcribed. So when there's dead space, I kind of want to let the author know that there's dead space, so the student doesn't sit there trying to transcribe and going, why are they not talking? So, all right. So here we go. Back to the APA, the most important thing in the world. You will note that at the very top of this paper, the green notes indicate they have like cool little messages for you to get further information. I'm not going to read every single one of them. That would be insane. If you want to have a look at them, you have this document, this PDF available to you, and I have no problem answering questions as they are sent to me via email, phone call, smoke signal, however you think you need to get a hold of me. At the very top of this paper, there is no longer a running head in the APA 7th edition. It has been removed from the 6th edition. It should make a lot of people's lives, including mine, easier because I don't have to point out on every single paper that running and head both should be title case and they both get capitalized, and then everyone looks at me like I'm crazy. They got rid of that. So it's amazing. It's fantastic. You will note that the page number is now in exclusion by itself. It doesn't say Springer 1 like we've all been taught to do. That is because another one of those wonderful antiquated hangovers has been removed. It's assumed that the person viewing these papers is now on a computer, and there would be no way they could accidentally drop the stack of papers with every student involved that isn't stapled, and then have to put them all back in the right order based off of name and number. So, kind of nice that they went to a completely digital model. As we scroll down, you will see the title is now moved up a little bit. They used to have this centered in another antiquated holdover from the typewriter days where you would center a title on a title page. That has now been removed and replaced with this thing that's about a quarter to maybe a half inch up. Really important point I want to make here about titles. I feel like people are going to think I'm being funny. I'm not. It's bold center title case only. It's not 18 point, 34 point, 64 point, Comic Sans. Take your pick, whatever other font you want to make it so that yours looks special, shiny, and bright. It's black. It's not green, purple, red. I know these sound like stupid things, but these are all examples of APA formatted papers I've had handed to me before. And I will kind of deviate on this for half a moment and say that following the APA format is important because you want all your papers to look the same. So if 30 of you turn in a paper, the only thing you want me to be able to identify differently is the content of the material. If I look at Alex's paper and it's got a wonderful whale and shark on it, and it's in a pastel blue, and he's put a 47-point faded headline on it for me to see that it's his, I'm not going to look at it and go, oh, it's Alex, I'm really having fun, I want to look at this paper. I'm going to be like, why is he breaking the rules? And all of a sudden, I'm going to grade him differently. That's kind of a pro tip. So it's better to blend in when it comes to the way your paper looks than it is to be fancy and get yourself in a bind, because all of a sudden you lose points that way. So again, I'm going to point out 12-point, double space, don't change the font sizes. The only thing that changes in the font is whether it's bold or italics, and we'll get into that in a minute. So, to the title, below it, you will see there's a space from the title to the author's name. Then below that double space is the department. Then below that is the course. Then below that is the professor's name, and below that is the date. I'm only going to pause on the professor's name and say this once. Everyone, I think, would agree. Nothing is more offensive or sad or dismissive than misspelling your professor's name. Yes, I've had students misspell my name, which I think is the easiest name on the planet to possibly spell. Straight is a word that everybody will eventually use in one way, shape, form, or another. So seeing it in any format is horrible. I've actually had someone put Mr. Just Mr. Because they could, hey, Mr. They couldn't remember my name on a paper they submitted to me. Not losing track of that. Please spell your name correctly. I've had students submit stuff in all lowercase for their own name. Find the value in who you are. If your last name is Springer, capitalize that. Make sure everybody knows it's a proper noun. All right, so moving along. Sorry about that little rant. The bottom of this page, the space they freed up is for an author's note. However, students do not put an author's note there, so just leave it blank. I don't think we're going to even go into why there's an author's note or not, because we're not doing a professional paper. On page 2, you will note that the page number is there and no headline anymore. So not only did they get rid of the running head, the traditional running head on the first page, they get rid of the header on every single paper other than the page number in the top right corner. So if you're putting it somewhere else, don't do that on this future paper. The word abstract is centered because as a key element for remember titles and key elements get centered. They're what we would call like the top tier headers on a paper. They always are centered in bold, period. That's it. Nothing else. Not underline, don't dress them up. For the abstract, there is no indent on the first paragraph, and the abstract is very clear. There is no real convention for what must be contained in the abstract other than it must tell a reader what you're going to tell them, period. Think of it as an extended thesis statement. This paper responds to, if you're looking at it with me as we talk about. They have sort of this intro sentence. That's not necessarily mandatory. For this example, it's great, but for a really good abstract, it should say this paper responds to, this paper argues, this paper concludes. No one who ever reads your abstract should be confused about what you're going to do in that paper. It should not be more than 250 words. There is no set number, but I'm telling you, man, once you get over 250 words, you're getting into a second page on an abstract, you're doing it wrong. And actually, if you look down here at the very bottom right, there's a sort of turquoise colored box that pretty much says what I just told you. So if you forgot what I said, or you didn't, or you don't remember later, that's what it is. At the bottom of your abstract is keywords. Keywords is indented, italicized. Only the word keyword and the colons that come after it. Everything else gets unitalicized. Here's why. When you submit a paper, do anything where it gets aggregated and archived, when someone is able to look up other people's work by keyword search, that formula right there tells the software this is what the keywords are and this is what they are. So if you were doing a study for this particular assignment that we're doing now, the annotated bib, and you were to research in a database the word college teaching, this should pop up because that's the first keyword. If you looked up any of these other variations of the words, it would pop up that way. That's all that does. So not to get too bogged down in that, we're going to keep moving past. You'll note that in pink on the bottom page 2, it does say, past this point, student paper and professional papers are virtually identical besides the absence of a running head in the student paper. That should tell you that if you're doing a publishable piece, you're going to want to go look and see what the differences are for APA professional papers versus student papers you're submitting for me for a grade. On page 3, by the way, that's 2 pages you've already caught for a paper. So if somebody says something like, I need a 4-page paper, you definitely want to qualify if they're talking about the body of the paper and not the entirety. Because if I said I want a 4-page paper and someone like Alix were saying, does that include the cover page and everything else? And I would be like, yeah, man. Well, then I'm only asking for a 1-page paper. Is everyone digging me on that? Do you follow? So
Yes.
for the purposes of our class, I'm always talking about the content, not the incidental papers that must happen. Your abstract, your title page, and your references don't count unless I say they do. All right, so looking at page 3, you'll note that the title is again on this paper so that if a person were going through all these other things, they might go, what was that title again? They've got the title again. There's no space between that title, which is centered, bold, and title case. And then the next line. There's no space between it. There's no names on this page. Immediately starts with an indent and starts up. Now, we've already covered how we identify scholarship by the author's name, which is Thiel. And so these things aren't new. We've already talked about page numbers. So for APA standard, a P period and then the page number in parentheses is how you identify what page that quote is on or that paraphrase statement. PP period and then the two page brackets. So in this case, it might be like 91-99 so that a person can follow the APA standard. I'm scrolling down because we've covered a lot of this, but I want to get to this parenthesis conversation I was having with, there it is. So if we look at the very beginning of this, look at one such measure, the part that I just highlighted. The student evaluation of teachers, parenthesis, SET, parenthesis, comma, has been virtually ubiquitous since at least the 1990s. And then there's a close quote tab, right? An in-text citation. Does everyone follow where I'm at on my page?
Yep.
Now, here's why parentheses are problematic for me as coming from a professional writing background. The APA says that if you put something in parentheses, it means don't read it. It literally means if it's in parentheses, it's for reference purposes only. In this case, they have one such measure, comma. The student evaluation of teachers, comma, has been virtually ubiquitous since at least the 1990s, period. That's how that reads, okay? Which means SET, this acronym that they're going to use, and they do use in the next sentence, is something you should not read. But that's not their intention. What they're doing is they're saying SET is also known as, the student evaluation of teachers is also known as SET, right? So you have to decide how much you want to put in parentheses and how you want to do that. Because every time you do parentheses, it tells me not to read it. Part of the problem here is that this person doesn't really know how to use commas. Commas are a wonderfully nested thing and they get really interesting. And the problem with this sentence in particular, and we're going to kind of do a side grammar lesson here, is that where do I use commas? I'm going to switch over to my big blue button screen so I can see all my smiling friends' faces. What are the three major rules for academics to use commas? Leeks is going to learn something very English today, I think. Stephanie unmuted. She's going to say something. Go ahead.
Before conjunction.
We'll come back to that in a minute.
If you can take that phrase out.
Where should you not use a comma? I feel like we're going to have a side story here. So for my transcriber, this would be kind of an important note, but it's a side note. All right, so let me see if I can turn off my stuff and pull up the magic whiteboard. There it is. We're going to delete this. So here are the three rules on the whiteboard, and I'm going to talk about them out loud. Alex is going to type. I think commas are like normal pauses in conversation. No, unfortunately, that's an old school myth we've all been taught, and I'm going to break that right now. So here's a grammar. Commas have three rules. For academics, obviously, you can use them for dates and things like that. So before you think that I'm saying omit those, I'm not. The rules work like this: before, middle, after. So if I have a sentence, I want to put a comma at the beginning of it, I'm going to have extra information at the beginning of that. And it's going to look something like this. Ironically, comma, he knew nothing. That is a before, because is the sentence he knew nothing complete? Uh-oh, y'all scaring me.
Yes.
Yeah, it is.
Because it has a subject, verb,
And a pre-
and a preposition, or what we would call the object, right? Because it doesn't necessarily have to have a preposition, but it has to have something that's being acted upon, right? In this case, that's nothing. So ironically tells me more information about what he knew, right? Or what he didn't know. Now, can I switch this around and say something like, I do that. He knew nothing, comma, ironically.
Yes.
Yes. So all of a sudden, we just saw the before and after rule for commas. If it's extra information about the full subject, the full sentence, then it gets a comma. You'll see it in cases like, well, in particular, we'll say something like subsequently, conclusively, they found X, Y, Z, right? Does that make sense? So that is the before and after. Because you can actually say after, you could say something like fell into lake. quickly. More information, right? Now, the middle rule is the most important one. It's the one most people mess up, and it's the one we're talking about specifically for this conversation. I could say a leak springer. Malik Springer, a combat veteran, gold medal athlete in javelin throws, and all-around great guy is here. What parts of the sentence do I not need to have a complete sentence? It's very obvious if you're following the commas.
Just you can take out everything in the middle, so you can just have a leak Springer and then is here.
Yep. And so this is that middle rule that I'm talking about. If I'm adding extra information about a noun, in this case, that noun is Mr. Springer. Then a combat veteran gets commas. Gold medal athlete gets commas. An all-around great guy gets commas because I have a list inside of this description about him. So anytime you're offering more information about something or extra information about a noun, it has to be a noun, then it gets commas. Does that make sense to everybody? I mean, I'm trying to keep this really simple. It's kind of, commas get complex and they're very troubling for people. But these are the three rules. So if I have extra information at the beginning, extra information at the end, or extra information about the noun, it gets 2 commas. If you're a computer science person, which I don't know if Madison or any of these other individuals are, think of it as the HTML coding. You can't do HTML coding without an open and a close tag. This is how that kind of works in the same systematic way. So any sentence I do where I'm going to talk about need more information. So let's go back to, sorry, I'm going to scroll back to, no, it's over here. I'm going to take this sentence that they have, so we can look at it over here. I'm going to paste it in horribly, and then be upset because it didn't work. I don't like the way that looks. Let's do it with the Word document. I have a little bit more control of what that does, right? You all still following my screen? No, so I need to reshare my screen. All right, so now sharing my screen again. Sorry about that. So let's look at this document. Everyone see the Word document again?
Yep.
Yes.
All right. So I'm going to make this a little bigger simply because I want everyone to be able to see what I'm doing here. By the way, what should you not do with your titles that I just did with this for visuals? Make it bigger. Stephanie, don't send any 20-point font titles to me, man. All right. One such measure. Is this extra information or is this the noun that we're getting more information about here?
Ooh.
Yes,
Should be the noun.
It's a noun. It's a noun phrase. Agreed? So the student evaluation of teacher is extra information about that measure, so it gets commas. What they've done is they didn't want to go the student evaluation of teacher, comma, set, comma, because that would be weird, right? But what they could have done is all of a sudden they have their commas in right. Are you following what I'm saying now? Like it's extra information about the noun that precedes it. In this case, it's a noun phrase, right? The student evaluation of teacher, comma. More information about that is that it's also known as SET, comma. Verb has been virtually ubiquitous since at least the 1990s. So I want you to think about that when you're working on your papers. It's very relevant. I know it sounds kind of goofy and I'm hounding on a small grammatical thing. You need to understand how that works so that you can both follow the APA standard but also use proper English. All right. So looking back through here, we've already discussed, and I'm back on the sample paper. Sorry. So I'm going back to the discussion. So I've moved away from paragraphs for now again. But we'll talk about them again as we scroll down in a minute because you'll see another example of this. Anyhow, you'll see that the ampersand is used in the in-text here, where I told you before, if it's outside, it gets the word and. Remember that. Similarly, Darwin, you see this is similarly is extra information. Darwin refers to teacher evaluation as an established orthodoxy, labeling it a venerated axiomatic institutional practice. See how those are extra information to the original sentence? Darwin refers to teaching evaluation as an established orthodoxy, period. Like similarly and labeling it are both extra information. That's why they're there. Going back, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I don't see anything on my screen.
You're not seeing, I'm not sharing it again? I thought I was sharing. Let me try.
The whiteboard.
There, is it working now? There it goes. It just showed me some kind of. There, you guys got it now?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
Good.
That's weird, man. Okay, so if you look where I'm talking, I've highlighted the sentence for you guys on the PDF. Just similarly, Darwin 2012 refers to teacher evaluations as an established orthodoxy. This is that comma rule that I wanted you to see. If you look above that, today sets play an important role. Today is extra information. Above that, by the mid 2000s, comma. You can look through this document and see all kinds of places where you can understand the comma rule better. Moreover, at the bottom of the sentence, you'll see it there. Moreover, comma. Because you don't need them, they're extra information. They do things with the language, but they're not necessary for commas. Going back to what Stephanie said. Sorry?
Next to why is there a comma next to venerated?
Where's venerated? Oh, because this is a list. Labeling it a comma, venerated comma, axiomatic institutional practice. They're using two.
Venerated is?
I'm sorry?
I'm saying venerated has a comma, but axiomatic doesn't have a comma.
No.
All right.
These are descriptions of the institutional practice, but they're quoted. That's why.
All right.
And we can actually get deep into commas if you guys really want to spend a day talking about grammar. I don't have a problem. We can do it next week if people feel comfortable spending an hour being grammar to death by me. I have no problem doing it. I love grammar. Trying to find this other example for you. Okay, so here's on page 4. Another important thing. US is what type of speech?
English.
You beat me. You gave me the perfect answer. It's an acronym, agreed?
Yeah.
So it's the United States. In the United States, when turned into an acronym, is what?
Proper noun.
US.
Well, it's U. It should be U period S period. Agreed? Don't agree? Agree? Don't care? Quinn's like, I don't care. I'm tired. I've been up all night working on your stupid paper. Well, if I showed you the sample and it doesn't have periods, that means you have an argument if you don't believe that it has periods. I just told you that my position on it is that it should have periods. So I'm actually showing you how you can argue with the professor if you think you're being judged on something that's not wrong, but they're just taking points away, right? But it's in this document as US. So keep that in mind. Those are things you should be looking at. In particular, because certain formulas, especially if you go into other fields, which may be engineering that uses like IEEE, they may have a requirement that you put this periods. You should know what those things are, and it should be relevant to you when you're writing. Moving along. You'll see boring at all. I'm sure that we've all seen at all at this point in some kind of document. Now, an old antiquated way of doing this used to be on first reference. I think 6th edition still had this. On first reference, you had to put out every name versus et al. For sources that had 3 or more authors, which meant that you would have to have Boring, Smith, Wilson, and Fredericks in that first reference. And then all subsequent references could just be Boring et al. In the 7th edition, they had changed it. It literally is any source with 3 or more authors in in-text citation now just gets et al. And then the date of publication. Remember, it's et space al period, then a comma. So et al is together. It's not shortened. It's Latin phrase. Et al. So I've seen it done in some weird ways. So we scroll down. Go
You
ahead.
have 3 say et al. That's what you're saying, right?
You broke up on part of that.
You're saying all you have to do is list your first 3 alphabetically, then et al. ... Correct?
No, they changed it. That's what I'm trying to tell you. Now you just have to have the first name and then et al.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? Like, I'm telling you a 6th edition because the MLA still uses something that looks like the 6th edition. In the current model, 7th edition, it's strictly the first author's name and then et al. For any publication that has more than 3 authors. So if it has 2, Straight and Springer wrote an article, you have to put Straight and Springer, period. But if Straight, Springer, and Mameo all created a paper together, it would be Straight et al., period. Okay?
Gotcha.
Perfect. All right. Now, if you look down here, back on this document, the sample paper, you'll see that we have, I'm trying to get to the sentence here. It's really a long, dense sentence at the back end of this. I'm going to read it out loud so that the transcriber can know what we're talking about. Particularly as public schools have experienced pressure in recent decades to adopt neoliberal. By the way, pop quiz in public chat. If you can tell me what neoliberal is, I would love to hear it. Market-based approaches to self-assessment and adopt a student as consumer mindset. Information from evaluations can even feature in department or statewide funding decisions. Period. Did I read that sentence correctly?
No.
No, because this person used parentheses again. What they put in the parentheses was C, for instance, the Obama administration's Race to the Top initiative, comma, which awarded grants to K through 12 institutions that adopted value-added models for teaching evaluation. This is one of those places where, and I'm warning you guys how commas work. Depending on where your reader's from and how they read, they may not read what's in the commas, or they will assume what you're putting in or not in commas, in parentheses. They may assume that what you're putting in parentheses is unimportant or for reference purposes only and omit it. That's the problem for me. This person needs this part of the sentence to complete the entirety of their information for their sentence. So my rule of thumb, period, is that if you put it in parentheses, you're telling me it's not part of what you're writing. Do not use parentheses for your academic writing to try to create a layered voice that feels like you're telling me something, but you're not telling me something. Does that mean, like, I'm going to switch back to our screen to talk about that. Does everyone understand what I'm saying? People become accustomed.
You're basically just saying don't use parentheses unless you're citing something. End of story.
Exactly.
Okay.
I dig it. Exactly. Well, I will have people that try it because they think it's an academic, like they're a language style. It's like people use ellipsis at the end of sentences. I always laugh. Everyone's done it probably. Courtney, you probably texted someone before and said, "Where are we going? ... But that's not what ellipsis means. So it does something different in this setting. So I think Kaya just cut to the chase perfectly. Do not use them unless you're citing, period. Moving forward. I'm going to scroll all the way to the end, to this last 2 pages. Oh, wait, no, I'm not. No, I'm not. We need to talk about this first. Where did I go? I lost it. I can't believe I almost blew by it. Okay. See on page 6, this 10 lit review. It's a second level heading. This is important, and this is going to help you guys in the long run, especially when we get into the lit review and then into the full research report. It may have helped you with the genre analysis, but I didn't want to create so many boundaries. So for the 4 secondary headlines, you can put, or not headlines, headings. Sorry, I'm stealing my words from the newspaper industry still. For a second level heading, This is the major headings that you're telling people things like, what we're going to do now is talk about the lit review. And then right below it, you have a third level heading, which you would say something like, in that lit review, the first thing we're going to talk about is the effects of teaching a contextual construct, right? An easy way to understand this and articulate this for me would be to say, in a genre analysis, I might say, instead of lit review, I might say documentaries. And then below it, I might say a 30-day diet at McDonald's is the artifact. You get what I'm saying? So it's like, by using this, you roadmap the reader to what you're going to be discussing in the paragraph below. Another way might be to say something like, instead of lit review, you might say podcasts as a genre that I'm going to discuss. And then the third level heading would be the Joe Rogan Experience, episode 327. And then I'm going to talk about that. And then if you look a little further down, we have this meta-analysis, this fourth level heading that's bold. It's title case still with a period after it, but it's inset. That might be something for like a genre analysis where I would have said rhetorical purpose, rhetorical situation, because then I could do the next one as audience. So instead of meta-analysis 2, I might do audience. Instead of meta-analysis 3, I might have done, I don't know, exigency. You know what I'm saying? So this allows you an APA to structure a roadmap for your reader that's very, very specific. If I'm going to talk about this article, then this is how I'm breaking that article down. These are the themes I'm going to discuss for each paragraph. Does that make sense for everybody?
So do we need those for the annotated bibliography? Those
No,
headings? Okay.
no. They're going to pop up in your lit review for sure. That's why I didn't mention them until after the annotated bib. Well, I'm mentioning them now, right, as we go forward. So we will definitely be using them in the annotated bib. I probably could have given them to you for the genre analysis. I thought about it like yesterday that it might have been more helpful to have added them in there. But then if I add them, then you're going to build strictly around that. And then it's too structured again. So don't worry about them until the lit review, Courtney. You're making me ramble now. All right, scrolling down. So yes, there are more levels of headings. You can find them in Purdue OWL. You can find them in the APA handbook. However, once you get below 4, you start really getting deep. In my dissertation, I think I had some that went down to the 7th level or 6th level of heading. But I'm really, at that point, you're really digging into something. You better be into the 50, 60 plus page range where you're just trying to keep people following the right breadcrumbs, right, to get where you want them to go. We're going to skip all this because it's just redundant information. Actually, it's funny because there's even a tag on here that basically says something like, this isn't a complete paper. It's been shortened so that it's for academic purposes only. So the person doesn't just try to copy paste it and use it for their own paper. The one on page 16 is where I want to get to the important part. So APA 7th edition adds this figure 1, what I would call figure 1, illustration 1, table 1, whatever you need to call it. They no longer want you to break up your text in the actual paper with the photos, with whatever. Instead, they now want you to put at the very end this tag, figure 1, image 1, whatever it is, right? It's a 2nd level heading, flush left, bold, and title case. And then right below it in italics is a brief description of whatever that is. So if it's an image, you just have to say an illustration of a picture of John F. Kennedy speaking at whatever, the White House, right? It just has to have an informative tag there, letting people know what it is. And that has two folds. One, if we have a really bad internet connection and we're looking at something online, it may not allow us to see the picture. So we get like an X where the picture is. I don't know if you've ever had this experience. And at least we have something that tells us what the picture is supposed to be. The formula tag is how you would cite that image back up in your paper. So if Leaks is talking about an image in his paper, instead of showing me the picture or saying, I'm citing this picture that I'm talking about, he might say, figure 1 you will see. And I know to look down because that's where it's going to be. That's what this is trying to do. And it doesn't affect the job, I think, when it's used correctly. at the bottom, you will see centered is this note. Note is italic with a period, italicized with a period, and then the rest of it is not italicized. And this just explains what's going on. So at the top tag, it indicates what we're looking at. This would give a reader more information about how or what is going on within that picture, so that we don't have to guess what you're thinking as the writer about that picture. Because remember, you may be posting a picture of, I don't know, World War II war bonds. I talked to you guys about this picture before. And you may have one perspective of what that picture looks like. Sorry, my dog's going nuts because my wife's coming in. You guys may have an idea as a writer of what you wanted the reader to see in that picture. But if you don't explain it in your note below it, they may not see it. So the note just helps everybody be on the same page. But it also kind of works for ADA purposes. If somebody is using, is visually impaired and they're using software that reads your paper, and I do know professors that grade through that software, they will not have any idea what you're talking about in that picture because they can't see it. But if they can read the note like they're supposed to be able to, then you're making it accessible to all your readers. That works the same as I'm scrolling down for tables. You're going to want any extra tables at the bottom with an explanation, not only what the table is, but also at the bottom of the table, the note that tells the person what that table does. Because if I show you a table, but I don't understand the table, and you're not there to explain it, you didn't show me a table. You know what I'm saying? I wouldn't worry about scoring. So going to the references page, you will note that references are alphabetical. If you've done MLA, it's a lot like APA. One of the big differences that most people struggle with is this word references. It's not works cited. It's not bibliography. I've seen a bunch of different ones. I just, off the top of my head, I can't remember some of the funnier things I've seen, but I've seen it. Somebody actually said stuff I cited once. I saw that in a paper, stuff I cited. And when I asked them why, they said they forgot how to write it. And I was like, man, you really went out on a limb on that one, right? It's references. I think I've only seen reference once where someone had one reference, so they therefore changed it grammatically. But then you're not really referencing anything, right? You're just writing a paper summarizing someone else's paper. But that doesn't work in our setting. We've already talked about hanging indents on here. One of the big things I think most people don't know about is this DOI number at the very end. So the 7th edition, and I think the 6th edition had it in there to some degree. They want to know where you got the information from. If it's a website, you put the web address, the HTTP address. If it is a journal article or a book, you will go put this DOI number if you can find it in. I will tell you the easiest way to find it is to go through Son of Citation Machine. Not only will it help you build the reference until you learn how to build it yourself, it may not format them correctly. I'm going to tell you one of the areas it doesn't, but the other more important, well, 2 areas. The important part is that it brings in the deal. Now, before we get into Son of Citation Machine, if you look at the second one here, American Association of University Professors, this was a website. Back in the day, we would have, especially for 6th edition, we would have a tag at the end that said date accessed and then colon, and then it would say October 11, 2018. If you look now, they now have moved the date you accessed it up to the top. So in this case, they accessed this October 11, 2018. The websites, that stays perfectly the same. That's how you want to do it from now on. I don't know if you've seen it the other way. Maybe you haven't. So then if you haven't, don't worry about it. Now, continue rambling downhill quickly. The 2 things that the Son of Citation Machine citation software, an online website that you can go to, does is that it will help you find your sources and it will help you copy paste them into your reference page. It makes 2 glaring errors that most people don't know. One, it leaves the titles in title case. But in APA, if you look at this first reference by Amdy and Rosenthal, half a minute is lowercase, teacher is lowercase, evaluation. So it isn't title case. Only the first letter of a sentence, proper nouns, and the first letter after a colon get capitalized. It doesn't do that. So step 1, when I'm looking at your guys' references, I go, I don't care. I'll tell you that right now. If you're using some citation machine, I don't care. Take it till you make it, right? But it becomes problematic in that it also does it this way for the date. So it would say Amdi and Rosenthal are parenthesis 1993, comma September 3rd. That would tell me that you found that you went and used software. There are some professors that don't want you to use the software, but they're not there at your home when you're using the software. So the easiest way to work around that is to do what? And this is that pop quiz. I'm going to pop back over to my big button screen. So that would be a pop quiz. How can I use Son of Citation Machine if I'm really stumped? I'm Kaya. I'm overwhelmed. There's too much going on in my life. I don't have time to look up for 12 hours as reference. I go to Son of Citation Machine because it's just right there. It pops it out. I copy paste it in my reference page. And now I'm ready to send it. And there's one thing I know I need to do other than fix the title case so that Professor X doesn't find out I did this. What do?
Change how the date is written.
Change the date.
You just omit the month and day, right? And just leave the year.
Right.
You would be surprised how many people don't do that. And then when I respond to them in my criticism, I'm like, you probably should take the date out of this because there are professors that will pay attention to it. They're like, well, how did you know I used that software? And I go, I already talked about it. I talk about it every single class that I teach in this moment. And somehow people seem to omit that. So again, I'm telling you, I would be totally comfortable using Son of Citation Machine to do my references. I actually went back to put my DOIs in for my dissertation and had to do it. Otherwise, you're going to have to figure out how to navigate the Library of Congress, which gets really complicated and isn't worth your time wasting to just sit there and try to find everything by article and everything else. So going back to the document, so we can wrap up. After all of this, you finish your references. It's all alphabetical. You've put in your hanging indents. You made sure to take off that bad tag that gives away that you cheated to do your thing. And then you get to this, the appendix. Here's my thinking. You don't need to write an appendix. There's nothing you're producing at this level that requires an appendix. It's usually situated around things like when you did an interview and then you put in the interview transcriptions and those type of things in the appendix. Quantitative data would go in here. So if you talk throughout your paper about a bunch of studies that you were doing, you would put that stuff in here. But you will note that it is here at the end of this. That is because once you get into your papers, you might have to do an appendix. We will not. I'm going to wrap up this conversation about the APA by pointing this out. If you're using the APA Word document template, it pre-puts in an appendix. And in that appendix, it puts some really quaint little note like, this is where you would put your appendix information. However, if you do not have an appendix, you should delete this. How many students do you think submit something to me where right after I see the references pages, I see that exact note? And while I'm not going to knock you on your grade, I want you to think rhetorically about not deleting those tags in your paper that come through the Word document. Because when I'm reading it, all of a sudden I see insert title here, and then your title's next to it. I go, okay, I'm not going to grade against it, but it will affect my brain. Would you all agree? Because I'm going to laugh about it.
Yeah.
And if I'm laughing about it, it's probably going to affect how I grade. So it may not lower your grade, but I might go like, Alix, why are you leaving this in here, man? Dude. So I'm going to end it right there. Does anyone have any questions?
I was wondering, so like, is your references page written like a works cited page?
It is, but if you look, so there's one difference. If you've looked, let's look back at the document because I can show you the big one that's different than MLA. It's the one that most people are challenged by. If we look at the names, MLA would have, and I'm just making up this person's first name. It would have Nathan, Ambi, and Rosenthal, Ronaldo, or something. You know what I'm saying? It has a first name and last name. APA just wants the first initial of the first and middle name. So, like for me, you would do straight, R period, space, D period, space, parenthesis, 2020, parenthesis, period, which is a little different than the MLA. And when I say fake it till I make it, Addison, what I would do is I would look at the document I gave you when you do your reference page and just go, okay, the names are done this way versus the MLA. It's little small things like that that you'll notice. But just use it as a template to see how they switch them around. But that's the big change between MLA and APA, is that APA puts the last name first and it omits the first name. Because no one cares who Springer is, they care who Springer, comma, A is. Sorry, Alex, you're like right here, man. You're the easy victim for me. Does anyone else have a question, criticism, complaint? So we good? Gwen, you alive? You still with us?
Yeah, I'm here.
And she's like, oh my God, I fell asleep, but I woke up halfway through. All right. So I'm going to let you guys go on that note. I would start working on annotated bibliography. So again, no deadlines, but if I were working on this, Stephanie, and I had a full life going on around me and a family and all these other things, and I was thinking, I wonder how soon Dean would want this done. I might do something like by next Friday when we meet, have a copy in your hand that you could probably look at that would have all your annotations for your references that you want to talk about. They don't have to be complete, but at least the reference page portion, right? Because that's easy. You're out researching. Madison 7 things that she knows she's going to put in her annotated bib. So she just writes those references and has them done already. Then she can go in after the fact and just put in the extra information, right? But by next week, I would try to at least have those sources you want to use sorted out for yourself. That way, when we talk, I can say something like, hey, Courtney, how many references did you find for your equestrian conversation? And she can go, man, I'm really struggling. I've only found 4. This is hard. What do I do? And I can go, we can all collectively work with her and workshop next week to kind of come up with an answer for her. What I don't want to see is people showing up without anything. So don't let the sun rise and set 7 times in a row and then come to our next class meeting and I go, hey man, what are you doing? Where are we at? How are we doing? And you go. Then Alex will get mad and he'll be like, we need to cut this meeting short in about 5 or 10 minutes. And then everyone would feel bad about themselves and leave the classroom. And Kyle would be like, God, I don't know why you got so mad at us. It's so strange. Why is he always like this when we don't do our work? Right? We don't agree? I think Alex is watching something on TV somewhere. He's left the building.
I got a little bit of a content overload. I'm looking at the references and it matches how the Microsoft Word is. I'm just looking for the differences.
Well, it's okay to use the template, but you want to eliminate those things you're not using is what I'm saying. Don't leave them in. It's kind of like buying a new shirt and leaving the tags on while you walk down the street. It's obvious you just bought the shirt.
Yeah.
I know it's a style to leave it on your hat, but if you just left like the Marshall's tag hanging off the back of your dress, people might think you're going to return it the next day, right? Addison knows what I'm talking about. See, she's nodding. Mm-hmm. All right, guys. Alex, you got any questions?
I'm gonna probably reference through and look at this lecture again. It was a lot of shit in the middle. I may have gotten tangled up and lost. So I'm gonna go back and look at the lecture and see back.
It's easy to fade out. That's why we record them. If you need me, you know how to get a hold of me. Courtney, do you have any questions? You look like you've been sitting through an hour and a half lecture.
I just real quick. Okay, so for the annotated bibliography thing, you're basically just researching stuff that would wait, let me rephrase that.
Okay.
You're finding things that will support what we wrote about before, but you're not actually writing about it. You're just writing what they write. I don't know. I guess I'm confused.
Yeah, actually, you're not confused. You literally said it. If your topic
Okay.
is about equestrian horses in America, then look up research information about them. Cite that information, references, and explain what each one of those references is talking about. It's that simple.
Okay.
So if I want to talk about, I'm going to go back to the Joe Rogan experience, right? If I'm citing that as an academic source, I'm going to cite it as a podcast, as a reference, something that would be APA style, which there is a style for it. And then below it, I'm going to be like Rogan 2017, discussed with this expert the concept of something, right? And I would just explain exactly what they talked about, as if I were an observer of that conversation. Not that I want to put in how I feel about that conversation or anything else, just strictly what did they say? And I'm going to use some quotes because I want to be able to say, when they discussed, I don't know, marijuana usage in California, they said XYZ. I'll quote them and then I'll treat that as a quote, right? And it will fit. And all of that will basically look like a snapshot of what that particular podcast looked like. And for a book or a magazine or a journal article, it's going to be the same thing. I've invoked
So
this.
that's what you were saying.
Sorry. No, please.
That's what you were saying. That's what you were saying. You wanted to be one page was each one, right? Like, so right
Each
there where you
one.
were talking about the podcast needs to be one page, and then you're going to do another one for another page.
Yes, absolutely. So I would, for an annotated bib, you're going to have a number of these. I don't know if let's look. I don't remember if I put an actual 5 to 7 sources, which isn't bad.
Can we use the sources?
I'm sorry?
Can we use the sources from our genre analysis? Okay.
Exactly. Now you're getting it. So you've already done a genre analysis, so you know what you're talking about. Now in many cases, you guys talked about what they talked about. Remember, I told you this in your notes for those who have graded and submitted stuff. I said you talked about the topic, you've talked about what they talked about, but you didn't do the genre analysis. Now it's now the part you did where you talked about what that author was discussing is now that annotated bibliography. Cool. Okay, got any questions?
No.
Okay. Madison, I'm looking around. Anyone in the peanut gallery over here in the public chat?
Sounds good.
All right. So before we leave, one last question. Do we want to spend maybe 45 minutes next week doing kind of a grammar boot camp? Because I'm starting to get a sense that we might need to do that. Kaya is saying no, absolutely not. She doesn't want to hear about grammar. She's got the word verb tattooed on her arm.
No.
I'd be down. Yeah. Not like mandatory and down.
I'd be good with it.
So how about we set
probably
up?
need it, but I definitely don't want to listen to it.
Well, I teach grammar in different ways too. I think Kaya probably needs it too, because based off her reaction, she's like, I definitely need it, but I don't want to listen to it either. I'm going to go with, let's plan to do it, but let's do it my way, if that's okay with you guys, and we'll do it in like 15 or 20 minutes. I know 4 or 5 major things that I need to discuss with you guys that are probably completely relevant. Like some of you know how to build a proper sentence, but some of you probably never heard SVO in a sentence before to explain a sentence. I know that semicolons are one of my favorite things. Alex is going to pull this stunt when he goes and teaches English, since that's what he wants to go do with his life now. One time I walked into a class for I was teaching at a military institution. I walked in, I said, if someone can tell me how to use a semicolon correctly, I will give the 10 students in the class an A, and we won't have to meet again the rest of the semester. And we ended up meeting the rest of the semester. And it was a semicolon. So trust me, it's not like it's not like I've never seen people need help with grammar. Are you okay with that? You gonna show up, hang out, talk about grammar a little bit?
Me?
Yeah.
No, I actually have a grammar lesson with my own kids I need to do. So
Okay.
If I
So you're
have
not.
questions, I'll shoot them forward.
Okay. So like I said, it'll be very short, and then we will do, after that, we will workshop the rest of the stuff. So Kaya, you want to probably show up maybe 10 or 15 minutes after, because we'll definitely be talking about the annotated bib after that. Cool? All right. I'm going to let you guys go. This has gotten really long in the tooth. Have a good weekend. Be safe. Send me your emails if you need any information, and I am going to shut the recording now.